Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're embarking on a deeply emotional historical journey. We're looking at the life of a man who literally conquered the world's largest empire. And get this, he did it without ever picking up a single weapon. It's an incredible story of transformation, of raw willpower, and a philosophy that completely changed the course of modern history. We're going to explore exactly how an ordinary person became an absolute era maker.
You know, it's a fascinating historical paradox. On one side, you have this incredibly frail body, a simple walking stick, brown glasses, and a hand-spun khadi dhoti. And on the other, a man who brought the mighty British Empire to its knees using absolutely nothing but truth and nonviolence. I mean, it's really no wonder the world revered him as a great soul, or Mahatma, while the people of India lovingly just called him Bapu. Now, to actually witness this incredible life unfold, there are three magnificent documentaries that serve as our ultimate historical roadmap. First up is Vithalbhai Javeri's epic black-and-white film, Mahatma, Life of Gandhi, which captures his entire life using some truly rare footage. Then, there's Shyam Benegal's The Making of the Mahatma, which zeroes in on his crucial 21 years in South Africa. And finally, if you want to deep dive into his most famous protests, there's Khaar on Z5, which focuses entirely on the historic Dandi March. Definitely keep these in mind as we journey through his life today.
All right, let's jump right into Chapter 1, Mohandas to Mahatma. The spark.
So, Mohandas was actually born a very ordinary, remarkably shy boy in Porbandar, Gujarat back in October 1869. He eventually traveled abroad to study law, but it was really in 1893, over in South Africa, where his true transformation kicked off. Picture this. He's thrown out of a moving train because of fierce racial discrimination, and he's forced to spend the night shivering in the freezing cold at the Pietermaritzburg railway station. In that bitter cold, feeling that intense humiliation, a fire was lit inside him. He made a rock-solid resolve right then and there to fight against this deep injustice.
And that freezing night at the station, it was the exact birthplace of a totally revolutionary concept, satyagraha. This wasn't just, passive resistance. No, it was an active, powerful insistence on truth, a completely new form of nonviolent struggle. Actually, if you want to see the intense evolution of this philosophy during his 21-year struggle in South Africa, I highly recommend checking out that Shyam Benegal documentary we mentioned just a minute ago.
Moving on to Part 2, India's Mass Movement, The Awakening.
When he returned to India in 1915, he didn't just isolate himself in elite circles or hide away in palaces. Instead, he traveled third class across the country's impoverished villages. He wanted to understand the nation's true soul. And this grassroots connection led to some massive early victories. He fought for oppressed farmers and laborers in Champaran and Kedah, and he stood right there with the workers during the Ahmedabad mill strike. These successes proved his unique weapons of truth and nonviolence actually worked. It all seamlessly evolved into the massive non-cooperation movement, where literally millions took to the streets at a single call.
This grassroots foundation built up an unstoppable momentum over the next 3 decades. It escalated from his return in 1915 straight through the massive crescendo of the 1930 Dandi March, the decisive 1942 Quit India movement, eventually culminating in independence in 1947, and then, sadly, his tragic assassination in 1948. But this sheer momentum perfectly sets up his most famous confrontation with British law right in the middle of that timeline.
And that confrontation? That's the historic 1930 Dandi March. Just imagine a man in his 60s walking for miles and miles, gathering thousands of ordinary citizens along the way, all to challenge an unjust British tax. And why salt? Well, because it was a basic necessity that impacted the poorest Indians the most. It was an absolute masterstroke of political theater and non-violent resistance. To really feel what it was like when thousands defied an empire by simply making salt, the Z5 documentary Khaar is an absolute must-watch for an immersive look.
Now, things get significantly heavier as we enter Chapter 3, Final Struggle and Martyrdom.
As we move into the 1940s, the struggle reaches a boiling point. Do or die. This wasn't just some catchy political slogan. It was a non-negotiable ultimatum given to the British during the 1942 Quit India movement. The time for gradual concessions was officially over. He was calling on every single citizen to dedicate their life to the cause of freedom, utilizing every ounce of nonviolent strength they had.
The eventual victory on August 15, 1947 was incredibly bittersweet. While a newly independent India celebrated in the streets, raising their tricolor flag for the first time, the father of the nation was nowhere near the capital.
He was way off in Wakali, undertaking a grueling fast to calm the horrific communal riots brought on by the agonizing pain of partition. He was quite literally putting his own life on the line to restore peace.
Which brings us to the very dark day of January 30, 1948. While he was on his way to a prayer meeting at Birla House, the bullets of an assassin, not the Ram Godse, violently silenced Bapu's body. As he fell, his final words were a call to the divine, "Hey Ram." The man of peace meant a violent end, plunging an entire newly born nation into deep mourning.
This tragedy really forces us to pause for a second. In our modern, super fast-paced 21st century, does a man who spun his own cloth and walked with a wooden stick still have something to teach us? Is Mahatma Gandhi still relevant today?
Let's answer that in Part 4, Bapu's Immortal Legacy.
You see, while he might not physically be among us, Gandhi transformed from a man into a living, breathing idea, and ideas cannot be silenced. The principles that were born on that freezing night in South Africa transcended death and crossed borders. They directly inspired monumental global leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement and Nelson Mandela in his fight against apartheid. He became the enduring blueprint for global advocates everywhere, fighting for peace and universal brotherhood.
His ultimate philosophy was incredibly simple. Truth is God. As long as humanity faces injustice and as long as the world needs peace, his methods are going to remain deeply relevant. So I'll leave you with this. In today's deeply fractured world, how much power could one person, armed with nothing but an unyielding grip on the truth, still wield?